Thank you. My mic is working. Good morning, everybody. How's everyone doing? Enjoying it so far? I've just come in for the last session. Thank you, Tim. That was really inspiring. It's really nice for me to actually hear some of the stories and successes from the EDU part of the Google for Work business. So I'm Kim Wiley. I head up the change and transformation team for the international business within Google for Work. So essentially, the role of myself and my team is to help all of the large strategic businesses everywhere outside of the US to make the most from the Google Apps products. Okay, so thanks to the guys for inviting me along today to just share some of my tips and advice and insights from helping with the change management and transformation elements of moving large organizations across. So I'm hoping some of my lessons learned will be sort of relevant for the work that you're all doing. How familiar does these reactions look? Everyone recognize some people in here? So despite my best efforts, unfortunately, people still seem to resist change. I've been working very hard on this for the last, 10 years of my career. People still resist change. And I think, presumably, that's not going to go away anytime soon. But it's an important thing, I think, for us to all understand that we do all have reactions to change. If we can empathize with those and actually understand some of the psychology that actually goes on kind of behind the scenes, we're more able to help people through their own journey and kind of reach this, the success that you're all looking for. So typically, sorry, I keep bumping my microphone. So typically there's kind of four types of people, four types of reactions we see when faced with change. The critics, probably all come across them. Any critics in this room? No one's going to put their hand up. Victims, bystanders, and of course the change navigators or the champions. Obviously, these are the people that we want. They're going to be the ones who really help inspire the rest of your organisation and your schools and so on to make the switch. Who thinks, or which, if we don't have 100% navigators, which do you think is the next best profile to have? Any ideas? Yeah, did I hear critics? Bystander? Who says bystander? Who says critics? Critics, yeah, so I'd actually say critics, which, although it can be sometimes a bit difficult to deal with people who are stamping their feet and shouting and resisting, actually, if you can get these people on board with your change, whether it's moving to Google Apps or cloud or Chromebooks or new devices, if you can get them on board, they will become some of your most powerful advocates, and they will really help drive the change within your organization. So I guess my first tip to you is to not be afraid of the critics within your organization. Spend a bit of time with them. Try and understand deeply where their resistance comes from, and hopefully you can sort of turn them around, and they will, as I said, become your strongest advocates. Has anyone here come across Connor's commitment curve? Is that sort of a change theory anyone's heard of before? No? Okay. Well, you'll all learn something new then. That's good. So there's a lot of different theories that relate specifically to change management. I've done a lot of study deeply into a lot of the different theories, but I think this one is one I wanted to call out for you all specifically today, because I think it really talks to the importance of investing some time, some effort, some energy, and some resources, and actually managing the change. I think all too often when we're faced with having to drive a change, I'm sure it's the same at schools and educational institutes as it is with large organisations, there's a desire to cut costs and not spend money on or time or resources on things that maybe seem like they're optional. So my advice is that change management is not an optional thing. If you want your project to be successful, you have to invest some time, resources and people into helping change the behaviours of your different stakeholder groups. And if you do that, you can work through, you build the awareness, make sure people understand why they need to change their behaviour or why the products or the technology is changing. You get to adoption, and then you get to this point of internalisation, where it's business as usual to be working in this new way. On the flip side, things can go wrong when proper change management is not sort of thought out and structured. So there's a lot of risks involved in not helping people change their behaviour. Your navigators probably just by the nature of them, they'll jump on this blue curve and they'll work their way up there. But in most instances, the navigators are probably not going to make up any more than about 25% of your population, if you're lucky. You're going to have to help the rest of the organisation or the rest of your group and stakeholders through the change. And the risks of not giving them that support is that there can be confusion. You get to a point where you're maybe breaching trust because people don't feel like they trust the leadership to make the right decisions, or they don't understand the reasons why they've been asked to change. Sabotage, obviously, that's very, very detrimental to the success of your project, but also to the culture of your organisation or your group. And then, a failed project, which for you as sort of change leaders and heads of your schools and your institutions, this is not what you want, obviously, right? So change management is a really important element of any project where you're expecting, or where the success of a project is reliant on people doing something different. Another couple of stats I just wanted to share with this group, because I'm guessing that you have a similar sort of challenge as some of the businesses I work with, where they say, change management, yeah, we'd like to do that, but it's kind of this fluffy, optional extra. We'll pay for the technical piece of the project, pay a partner, we'll pay for some project management, but the change piece, people will just get on board, or it's kind of an optional thing we can cut out. Here's some additional statistics that have been captured by some of the kind of thought leaders, McKinsey and ProSci, really demonstrates that change management is not an optional extra, is really critical to the success of projects, and it will actually add significantly higher return on investment to your projects. Just a quick question, has anyone heard of ProSci before? So ProSci is a change management research and educational body. So they have created a change management toolkit and methodology, and they also run a biannual report where they interview Fortune 500 companies and ask them about all of the previous 2 years worth of change projects that they've run within their organisation, and ask them what have been the most critical elements for success, and what have been the things that in hindsight you wished you'd done to make sure your change project was more successful. Anyone want to have a guess at what the single most influential factor for a successful change project is? Vision is second most important. Who's going to have the vision though? So, communication, very important. People, the exec sponsor and the leadership team. So the single most critical element for the success of any change project is the exec sponsorship. And it's proven, like they've done this study year after year after year, every single time without fail, that is proven to be the most influential factor. So for all of those of you in the room who are change leaders and decision makers, whether a project fails or succeeds, a lot of that is actually down to you. So you have a lot of influence on your projects being successful. We'll talk a little bit in a minute about what you should actually be doing and how you can really drive that behaviour. So executive sponsorship, really, really important. Now, I'm aware that this is probably quite an overwhelming slide to show up and potentially a little bit hard for you to read, but what I wanted to do is to give you an insight into the change management methodology that we have developed over the previous 5 years for all of our large strategic Google for Work customers. And in a couple of slides, I've got a QR code that you can scan that you can get access to the full methodology and toolkit. So But let me just talk you through it at a high level first of all. So as with everything at Google, things change and develop over time. This is the latest and greatest. We've had previous versions of the change methodology. But just to break it down to you, because it's quite a lot on the slide there. So the first, there's essentially sort of 5 work streams. And my recommendation is for you that this is an applicable sort of methodology to use for any type of change. So the first work stream, and I've just called that out, is the importance of executive sponsorship. Making sure the executive or your leaders have got a clear vision about why they're making the change, and they're prepared to be active and visible and really support and sponsor that change. And it's not just about having one exec sponsor, one person driving it, because the risk then, if you've only got one person who's really driving the project, say that person decides to move to another company or organisation or go travelling, whatever, then the project can end up floundering around a bit. So my suggestion to you is to make sure you get other stakeholders on board from different departments, from different stakeholder groups. So what we talk about in the methodology here is creating an executive committee. So people from different parts of your organisation, getting them on board early, making sure they're bought into the vision, and they can help drive the change through the different departments or different parts of the organisation. And post go live, don't just let things drop. So what we have here for our business customers is we get them to establish an innovation council. They don't need to call it that, that's what we've called it here. But the concept is that you create, again, a cross-functional group of people whose responsibility it is to continually look for ways to increase adoption and to improve the way that the group or department is functioning through the use of the products. One of the most common reasons projects fail is actually that after everyone's live, the efforts drop off. It's not just maintained until it becomes that internalisation piece. So that's the exec sponsorship piece. Single most important factor for success for any change project. Second piece that we talk about is what we call organisational analysis. And what that really means is understanding the profile of the different users within your organisation, understand what is the learning objectives for these different groups, what potential impacts are there to those different groups when we make the change, and then you can make your training and communications messages really targeted to those groups so that they know why they're changing, how it's going to impact them personally, and they'll be able to get on board with the project. The next one, communications, which is kind of the cornerstone, someone mentioned it, is really one of the cornerstones of any good change project. People need to know what's happening, they need to know why it's happening, they need to know how they are impacted, they need to know where to go for help. One of my kind of top tips that I talk about if you're creating any communications program or writing any sort of communications messages, if you can remember to include head, heart, and feet. I don't know if anyone's heard of this before. Sometimes head, heart, hands it's referred to, which means make sure your message includes something rational, which is the head piece. Why is the change happening? Make sure you have something that connects to people emotionally, which is the heart piece. And how we do that is what's in it for me as an individual. Why should I care about the change? And then the feet, or the hands, depending on which way you'd like to talk about it, is the behavioural piece. What support do I have and training do I have in order to help me change my behaviour? So if your communications messages can all include head, heart, and feet, you're kind of halfway there to creating a compelling communications plan. Next piece is training, which is making sure people have the skills and ability to be successful with the new technology or with the new behaviours. One of the biggest causes of resistance to change is actually a fear of loss. They feel like they're not going to be competent, they feel like they're losing something from the past. Right? So giving them the training and the skills and ability and that reinforcement to be successful in the new world will help reduce the risk of resistance. Any comments or questions so far? I realise I'm just kind of talking. Making sense? Questions? No? We can have some time for questions at the end as well. Okay, the last piece I wanted to call out, and this is actually a reasonably new element of our change methodology for our business customers, and this is what we call the transformation work stream. So what we've actually done, we've been working on how can we really help our business customers take the technology and truly transform. Not just we're using a different email platform, or we're using Google Docs in the same way that we used Word as a kind of a static thing, or we're just using using the products in the same way, not actually changing behaviours. And what we've come up with is what we call transformation labs, and I think this is a concept that any one of you could sort of take on board within your schools. Essentially, it's running a half-day workshop with a group of people who will be impacted by the change. And in that workshop, there's 3 sort of components. The first one is we inspire people by what's possible. What have other people in a similar team or vertical or industry, what have they done with the technology that has really improved the way that they function? So it's an inspire piece. The second piece is a brainstorm. So stepping back from the products and just saying, right, what are the challenges that I deal with day to day in my team? Not talking about products at all. So it could be that there's a really clunky reporting system that the marketing team has to use, and everyone has to fill in a spreadsheet and send it back. Or it could be that the event management team have this really old-fashioned way of sort of collecting or managing the attendees for events. So just understanding what are the challenges that teams deal with. And then the third part of the workshop, which is the really kind of the piece that really captures people's attention, and is a prototyping session. So you actually start creating some solutions to their problems using the new technology. So inspire, explore, prototype are the 3 sections. And we've found these to be hugely, hugely successful within the business teams. One example, we ran one with Jaguar Land Rover, which is one of our big customers. And one of the comments from one of the participants was, we've achieved more in the last 4 hours than we have in the previous 5 months trying to solve some of these challenges. So I think that's a concept that any group can take when you're working through a change. Because we all want to be involved in a change if it's happening to us or it's impacting us. So it's a great way of having people have an ability to sort of shape some of the solutions that come out of it, feel like they have some ownership of a change, and also you do a really good job of finding that emotional connection because you help them find what's in it for me. Any questions on that? Yeah.
Sorry, part of the transformational labs, you talk about finding problems. Isn't the whole process that you would have identified problems, hence the change? Is there a danger that you then, for the sake of it, are finding things to change to adopt the new technology? Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I would say the short answer to that is no, that hasn't happened, but to kind of give you sort of the fuller answer. So I guess when we're looking at the kind of life cycle of a customer or of an organisation, there is a lot of work that is done up front to, I guess, find the reasons why this is the solution that is going to be most relevant for a particular group or organisation. So for sure that piece is very, very relevant. The transformation labs, so I think one of the challenges with that is you find some great use cases. Hopefully they're implemented, but oftentimes that doesn't touch every part of the organisation or every stakeholder group. So these are actually going deep to different teams. So you would do multiple transformation labs. The way that we like to, with our large customers, is that we help them with the first one along with our partners, with the first one for a group. And then actually what we do is we upskill people from the customer's innovation council to be able to facilitate their own transformation labs. So they can actually go to the different teams and departments of organisations all over the world, wherever they're located, and go, right, today we've got the marketing team from the UK office. what challenges are you guys struggling with? If there's nothing, then obviously, great. I've never come across a team that doesn't have some challenges that they're dealing with, right? Or there's not something that they could improve in terms of the way they function. And we've actually just, to build on that, this is typically based on improving processes, but we've started doing a couple of cultural transformation labs for some of our customers now as well. They've found that the process improvement transformation labs have been so successful that they want to take it a step further and actually think more deeply, how can we change the culture of the organisation? So doing a brainstorm about what are the challenges culturally we're dealing with. For example, is there a lack of transparency in communication? Or, what are we trying to, do we want to inspire more innovation from ground up? And actually doing a brainstorming into that and then kind of, make sense? Any other questions on this piece? Yeah?
The enable strap there at the bottom, it says deployment 90 days.
Yeah.
Something magical about 90 days? Can it be shorter?
Of course it can be shorter, yeah. So this is the methodology we've developed, as I said, for the large strategic customers from the Google for Work side. And so typically we're talking, 5, 10, 20, 100,000 employee companies. The goal is to get people live in 90 days in terms of the deployment. And then after that, that's actually when the journey starts. And I think typically when I first joined this team, we were very much focused on what are the things we can do to get people live on the products. But now we're realizing actually, once people are live, that's actually just the start. If you really want transformation and you really want to achieve your goals and change behavior, there's a lot of work that should be done sort of post go live, if that makes sense. But that's kind of best practice. That's what we aim for. If you can do it in shorter, perfect. Any other questions? Okay. So another couple of tips for you. If you make stuff fun, people are more likely to get involved, okay? So I've popped a couple of images up here of some of the assets, the communications materials that some of our Google for Work customers have developed as part of their change management program. If you send out a vanilla flavored email that lists kind of technical steps that people need to do, chances are people don't bother reading it. If you have fun and interesting posters up and you actually have engaging communications, people pay attention and they're much more likely to get on board with the project. A couple of kind of examples here. One of the things that we encourage our Google for Work customers to do is create a champions program. Is that something you do within the schools? Yeah, you do. So this is a photo of some of the champions here, and one of the main roles of the champions is that during that first go live week, they've got ugly coloured Google t-shirts on, and they're actually walking around and helping and doing some peer-to-peer support. We recommend 5% of the population that is going to be affected by the change becomes champions. You get them live on the products first. They're kind of your guinea pigs. You test out if there's any change impacts that you've missed. You tweak and tailor your communications and training messages. Then everyone else goes live once you've done that testing, and these people help you doing via peer-to-peer support. The Yoda is a CIO of a FTSE 100 company. I won't reveal his identity. But again, it's having an executive sponsor for the project who is passionate, energetic, who sees the vision, and who's really active and visible, communicating and directly involved with the project. He walked around on Go Live Day, this is for a Google Apps deployment, and went around and kind of chatted to people dressed up like this. And it sounds silly, but you can just imagine the type of engagement that stimulated. Creating posters for the change as well is a useful way of communicating. Often we rely very heavily just on email, which can be easy to ignore as well. So creating posters and putting them up in the staff rooms, putting them up in the bathrooms. This is, I don't know if you can see, this is actually a bathroom. We use that actually a lot at Google. So for those of you who have been to the bathrooms here, you've probably seen our news in the loos. is a great place to communicate to employees or your users about a change, right? So think creatively about how you can get the message out there. I don't know if any of you have heard this statistic, but who wants to guess how many times do you think we need to hear or see a message before it properly resonates? Hundreds. So that's probably true for some people. But the scientific data or the research around is that we need to hear a message at least 7 times before we start kind of taking it on and going, okay, this change is actually happening. So if we think about a change project that has a communications plan revolving around 2 or 3 emails, chances are a lot of people won't pay attention to that. They won't even recognize that there is something that's going to be changing. So just kind of keep that in mind. One of the things we've found to be very useful with, creating all this stuff, this looks like a lot of time and effort and money, right? There's a lot of templates that you can use within our toolkit. But actually the best communications ideas and themes for your project will come from within your organization. So one of the things we've seen work quite well with a lot of the customers that we've been working with on the business side is actually running a competition and get the employees to come up with poster ideas. And actually this is an idea, sorry, I won't put that one. This one, it's probably slightly easier if I point here. This is actually a poster that was designed by the employees of an organization. So you run a competition, you get people involved, they are helping come up with some cool, fun ideas. Benefits for that, less cost for you, obviously. And then secondly, it means they start to feel some ownership in the project and they get kind of more buy-in into the change. If you want to take a minute, if you've got a barcode scanner app on your phone, if you scan this barcode, you will get a direct link to the full toolkit. So sitting behind here, this is on GWC. Has everyone heard of GWC? No one's heard of GWC. Partners, these guys can access it though, right? Yes. Okay, so GWC, let me just kind of preface it. Google for Work Connect is like the portal where we store all of the resources that we make available to our customers and to our partners. So that's one asset. There is, excuse me for putting a slide up with a picture of my own face on it, it's not, but there is a change management blog as well, which I post a lot of different change management topics on a regular basis. So please feel free to have a look at that. And I know you've got a bunch of EDU specific resources available as well. I'm not going to repeat the stuff the other guys have already shared. Right, so just to sort of wrap up, and then we'll kind of have maybe 5 minutes for questions if you've got anything additional you want to ask. But just some top tips for you all. Executive sponsorship and leadership is the single most critical factor for the success of any change project. So as leaders, you have to lead by example. You have to walk the talk. If you're asking your teachers to move to Chromebooks, you need to have a Chromebook yourself, right? If you're asking your students to collaborate with them yourself. Okay, so get involved, get your hands dirty. The second piece is a reminder about involving people from all of your different stakeholders in the change project. So run some focus groups, get a couple of students involved, get some people from your boards of directors, get people from different divisions or departments, and talk to them about what does this actually mean? What are the right ways of us communicating and getting this message across about the change to the different groups? And what do we think the impacts might be? And what can we do to help people through that change curve? The next piece I wanted to call out, and I think it's becoming increasingly important for every organisation to build in to their culture and ability to deal with change. The pace of change that we're all dealing with is only going to increase. So I think we shouldn't be thinking about we're going to do a change project and then stuff is going to just stand still for the next wee while and we'll be able to relax. The reality is those days have passed. Okay, change is just constant. So we need to all kind of get on board with being able to deal with change, not being fatigued by it. And it's a hard thing because it's against kind of human nature. but looking for ways that you as leaders can build sort of this culture into the organization is only going to benefit you in the long term. So a couple of, kind of practical ideas about how you do this. One is hiring people that kind of are able to deal with change. So doing your best as you're hiring new employees, hiring new teachers. Check out try and check out their ability or their preference or ability to be able to deal with change, because that's going to obviously be something you want to be able them to cope with in the future. The other thing, then this is something a lot of the business customers we deal with, we talk to them about, is have a think about the way you're measuring the performance of the employees. Are you measuring people's performance based purely on their output, or are you also considering behaviors in the way that you measure people's performance? And this is at Google, just to give you an insight. We are, for the most part of the teams, at least the teams that I'm in, our performance is measured 40% by output, 60% by behavior. Are we collaborative? Are we are we learning quickly? Are we able to deal with change? Are we able to deal with ambiguity? Are we helping other groups out? So think about that. I don't know how relevant that is for this group or not, but just to kind of give you an insight into something that can help change the culture. If you reward and recognize people for being able to deal with change, that's going to help build the culture of being able to deal with change. Don't let up too soon. Definitely one of the most common pitfalls I've seen of any change project. You can do all these amazing communications messages. You can do your change impact assessment, your user profiling, do a great job with everything. And then if you don't maintain just that little bit extra energy post go live, tips and tricks, post go live communications, post go live trainings, you'll see people slip back down into the kind of the dip of despair, as we often call it, in their change journey. So maintain the energy after go live. And don't forget to make it fun, because that will make things stick, and it will just make it much more enjoyable for you all as well. Right, so I think that is my last slide. So we've got a couple of minutes, and I just wanted to open up to see if anyone's got any questions. Yeah.
You go back to the Q1.
Yes. Okay, which one do you want, the blog or the? Can I go back? They're both on GWC, so. Once you get access to one, you have to sign up for GWC if you've never done it before. That's the one thing you will have to do, because it's a lockdown portal just for customers and prospects. It's not public to the world. Any other questions? Yeah.
So your initial conversations, are they with the chief executive? Or
Yeah.
with the guy who's going to deliver the change?
The C-levels. So CIO, CEO, COO, yeah. And that's a really good point. So one of the things that my team gets involved in is having those conversations with the execs before they've even made the decision to go Google, to make sure that people understand the importance of investing time, money, and resources into actually executing some of the stuff here in order for them to achieve their goals.
Okay, so those guys, I mean, in education, often at that sort of level, do you think they have an understanding of how the people on the ground are going to use this, or is that part of what you have to explain? Because I'm thinking in a school setting, you've got the principal or the head teacher has a secretary, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And his understanding of Google Apps, it might be a little bit different for the teachers.
Yeah, that's exactly the same in business, in the business. So I think, as part of the decision-making process to make the change to move to Chromebooks, to move to Google Apps, doing some of the elements of the organizational analysis and understanding the profiles of the different stakeholder groups. So, for example, in a business situation, you might have your factory workers versus your marketing team, HR, sales. These groups all have very different roles, and they have different uses for the technology. So the C levels, they really don't know necessarily. I mean, maybe I'm generalizing. They don't really know what's going on the ground floor, but actually, oftentimes, one of the reasons to make the decision to go Google is because they want to bridge those gaps, because they want some more transparency and channels of communication in the organization. It's about uncovering the use cases that are going to be relevant for each group. And then when we get through, so that's the conversation sort of before they've made the decision. And then as we get closer to making a decision, what we do is we go through various workshops and we go deep and we talk about how is this actually going to roll out or pan out within your organization. Go into the planning workshops and then into the execution. And then when you get to the execution, obviously your C-levels and your execs, they've got a role as the sponsor and sort of the face of the project, but they're not actually doing any of this, writing the communications plans or delivering training and things like that. That answer the question? Yeah.
Hello, I think there's probably a few of us in here that go out and do training at other schools. And so I'm just wondering if you've ever been into a business where maybe you've got lots of employees at the bottom of that commitment curve where it's already headed that way because of a change that's happened.
Yeah.
How would you deal with it from that point rather than from that nice sort of middle point?
Right, so you're kind of coming into a bad situation. You haven't been able to shape things. So that's always challenging, I guess. But I think one of the things, the first thing is empathy, obviously, being able to empathize with people. And I think even just talking them through the fact that change is an emotional journey. Everyone goes through it, and this is not an abnormal thing for you to be feeling upset by this. So I think starting with some empathy. But then I think you'd need to do some work before getting into that situation where you actually really deeply understand what is the reason that the change has been made, and find out, and work out what's your sort of elevator pitch for the head, heart, feet. Why has it been made? How can we find ways for that particular group to benefit from the technology? So almost going into a mini transformation lab. So you're a group of people, you're upset with whatever the technology is, but let's just talk about what are some of the things that you do day to day, and then see if you can find ways that the technology will be used to improve what they do day to day. I think if you just step into a situation and you just train people on something, 9 times out of 10, if they don't believe they need to learn it or they don't know why they should be learning, they're not going to take anything on board. So rather than leaping straight into the training, step 1, click this button, step 2, click this button, try and find out the reasons why the change has been made and make sure you tie that to why they should care about it being successful. Head, heart, and then you can get to the feet and give them the training and the skills they need. Right. I don't think, I'm kind of 1 minute early, so do I get a bonus point if I finish 1 minute ahead of time? Yeah. Okay, so I'll leave it there, but thanks again for your time and good luck with the rest of the day. Thanks.
Let's see if this is working. All right, here we go. Lunchtime, everyone's favorite time of the day, I'm sure. So we're just finishing up setting up the sandwiches in the back, so feel free to use the restroom, find one of us if you need to do so. Otherwise, food is over in that back corner, and we have an hour. So take care of whatever you need to, mingle, meet each other. Let us know if you have any questions.
me, my darling, I'm on the rise. See my sons playing on their minds. Now believe, my darling, feel it inside. See my name and all those flashing lights. I believe, I believe, I believe. I'ma be the one you need. I believe, I believe, I believe. And I will show you that I won't settle for no less. Give you my hardest, no rest. I just wanna do you right. I are heaven and both ends. Give you my hardest, no rest. I just wanna do you right, girl. I just wanna do you right. Follow me, my lady. Just follow my lead to higher grounds and way around. If you dare to believe, you're all I want, and all I want is you. If you're holding on, it's me you hold on to. I believe, I believe, I believe. I'ma be the one you need. I believe, I believe, I believe. And I will show you that I won't settle for no less. Give you my hardest, no rest. I just wanna do you right. I are heaven and both ends. Give you my hardest, no rest. I just wanna do you right, girl. I just wanna do you right. And I will bring you on my rides. I just wanna do you right. Yeah, I won't leave you down and out behind me. I just wanna do you right. I just wanna do you right. I just wanna do you right, girl. I just wanna do you right. I just wanna do you right, girl. I just wanna do you right. I'm still hoping it's ever coming. Just tell me something. Can I stop?